Okay, so I'm on the right camera because I want to make sure I'm not on that camera because I did a whole screen on that camera, which would look great, but I really want to be on this camera. So, stupidity. We're coming off of, as we sit here on Martin Luther King weekend, and I've just watched the president take the news cycle off of Russia by screaming that all these countries are shithole countries. Shithole countries. Then, yesterday, I'm listening to one of my regular shows, and one of the callers calls in and says, you know, I'm a white Filipino, blah, 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 blah. Do you see that? It went, yeah. Because even the host didn't catch on to that. Okay? And what that person was calling about was their North Miami neighborhood and the Haitian people that he believes are laughing at him. First of all, let me explain to you a little about geography. The geography basically of the United States, because some people don't understand that. And the reason they don't understand that is because I believe it's somewhere around 84 to 86. I'm not sure the exact number, but it's in the 80s, in the high 80s. That's the percentage of people who've never left either their state, their neighborhood, or a 30-mile radius of said area. Not joking, even here. But actually, that kind of can be true for a lot of other places. You'd be surprised. Not quite 80%. Even in Europe, it's nowhere near that high. It's a high percentage. It's like 60, I want to say 68 to 69. I have to look it up again. But it's high. But most people don't. We just don't leave our neighborhoods. So we don't explore. And those of us who do actually get to see these things and understand that if you live in North Miami, see, there's this thing called a coast, and that coast, excuse me, usually has ships and things because there's things out in the water there. And one of the things that's off that Miami, Florida coast is a bunch of islands. The Bahamas, the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti, a few other things are out there. So when you talk about tropical islands and where people might go once they leave those tropical islands, might not Miami and that area be part of the first stop? And since most people really don't, once they get to that point, they've gone a pretty good ways. They've gone 12 to 2,800 miles and gone through a lot just to get to that point. So they don't always venture any further north. So you get a very large population when you have disasters in those areas, which is what happened and why those areas are like that. So this gentleman, as we were talking about earlier, who's a white Filipino, was griping that the area he lives in has a bunch of Haitians that laugh at him because he doesn't know what they're saying. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty good at hearing certain voices and whether they've got some ethnic background to them, whether English is their first or second or even third language. And that's not always a heavy accent. It's not always a heavy accent. My friend Tom, who literally speaks perfect English, you would never ever know it. But there's just a little bit to his accent that told me right away that his first language was actually Japanese or or it wasn't English. It was probably a Asian language. I could just tell by certain R's and things that he said. And he said yes. Up until he was about 2 or 3, his parents didn't do it much. They didn't speak much English until he was about 3. So he still speaks perfect English, but there's that 2 to 3 years old where we all get our permanent accent from. And that's what happened for him, is he got that permanent accent, and it was just a little bit of, you could just, but only if you were paying attention to that. Most people would not even notice that. I notice that a lot. So when people phone in, I hear those things. And it was just like, Filipino dude. But trolls are trolls on call-in shows, so you have to be careful with that. But just the fact that he said that just kind of blew my mind. And now we're sitting here in this almost noontime Pacific Coast time. Not Hawaii time, Pacific Coast time, so about 8 a.m. their time. They got false alarms on their phones. Yes, their phones went off with Amber Alert style alerts, which runs you can't get away from. Big white alerts that scream at you to get going, go. Yes, there are bombs on the way to Hawaii is what they got this morning. Now people are worried about not only that we got those messages, but the system may have been hacked, even though they may have been doing drills, and the idiots who were doing the drills didn't replace the drills with test. I'll be right back.